Friday night. I'm Faye. Thank you for joining us. It's time for our version of the world this week. And this is basically our attempt to tell you everything you may have missed that was happening around the world while you were busy with your week. In my home studio with me is Amitha.
Hi.
Amitha Balachandra, and we're going to just take you through the news of what has happened this week. Starting off with, it's a grim story. Iran has carried out an execution of the first protester of the anti-government protest. This is according to BBC. Mohsen Shekhari was executed on Thursday after being found guilty, Amitha, by a revolutionary court of enmity against God. But
Yes.
the specifics were slightly different.
Yes. So basically, he was accused of being a rioter who blocked a main road in Tehran in September and wounded a member of a parliamentary force with a machete. He appealed against the verdict, but it was upheld by the Supreme Court on 20th of November anyway. And human rights bodies have said that he was even denied, and I'm quoting the Iran human rights body, which said that he was denied access to his lawyer throughout the interrogation phase and legal proceedings as well.
So he was apparently found guilty of, intention of killing with a weapon, causing terror, disturbing the order and security of society. And he was convicted of, and I quote, enmity against God. It really becomes worrisome when governments start to confuse themselves with God. And I think this is what we're seeing right now. But, we've had human rights bodies talk about this for a while. The government's response to protests in Iran have really been concerning. The numbers, we don't have clear numbers still. But so far, 475 protesters have been killed by security forces. 18,240 others have been detained, and this is according to the human rights activist news agency. And like I said, these are still not clear, numbers, but it could be worse.
It could be worse, but Iran has sort of downplayed it, and they've said that this is not the accurate number as well.
You know what else the government of Iran has said? They have said that these protests are not about Mahsa Amini, who is a 22-year-old woman who died in custody because the morality police felt that she was not wearing her hijab properly. They say that it's basically being instigated by the country's foreign enemies, and the young people in the country are being sort of misled. It's an argument we've heard before, but we're talking world news right now. There was also, quickly taking a detour, there was some confusion about whether or not the morality police was disbanded at all. That story came up. I remember we quoted Al Jazeera saying that there was a minister who made a statement that sort of hinted to a suspension. And then immediately after there was a clarification saying
there was no official response from Iran about this. So there's still confusion on whether it's been disbanded at all.
Yeah, it's probably not. Moving on to Ukraine and Russia still remains a massive story. And it's quite grim. Vladimir Putin has now decided, or he's vowed, to continue hitting Ukraine and its energy infrastructure, despite the fact that it's leaving millions of people across the country of Ukraine without energy, without heating, in sub-zero temperatures. It's freezing out there in that winter. And his response was, and I'm quoting, "There's a lot of noise about our strikes on energy infrastructure of a neighboring country." He didn't even use the name. "Yes, we do that, but who started it?" End quote. It's really, so there are several responses right now about emergency blackouts.
There were emergency blackouts. In fact, in the last 1 week, there were Russian attacks which caused at least 4 deaths and in Ukraine. And President Zelensky then went out to say that Ukrainians need to brace themselves for emergency blackouts. Kyiv's governor also said that half of Kyiv is now without electricity.
And water. Remember, when you are in India, we're not used to this, but when you're in freezing temperatures or below freezing temperatures, you need heating, not just so you don't freeze, but your taps freeze and your pipes freeze. And so the water in your pipe is also frozen. Yes. So you don't, if you don't have heating, you don't have water. And that then becomes a huge problem as well. So no electricity, no heating, no water, which is beyond a shadow of doubt, a human rights situation.
Yes.
In response to that, the EU, the G7, and Australia on Saturday approved a $60 per barrel price cap on Russian seaborne oil, which will come into force on the 5th of December. The EU president has said G7 and EU member states have taken a decision that will hit Russia's revenues even harder and reduce its ability to wage war on Ukraine. Russia's response, though?
They've said that it will not accept the price ceiling, and then they've said, and I quote, Moscow has already made it clear that it will not supply oil to those countries that support anti-market price caps. But interestingly, India is not following the cap.
This actually requires a little bit of a breakdown. The reason why Russia is like, yeah, man, whatever, is because a lot of Europe is dependent on Russia for its oil. And the options really are few of where you get your oil from. There's Russia, and there is the Saudi and the Gulf countries, the OPEC countries, basically. And so a lot of European countries started buying oil from Russia, and now they can't stop. Because you're dependent on it. So Russia is like, you can't command a price to me. I command the price, boss. So that's the conversation that's happening. Now, India and China are among Russia's biggest oil buyers. They have said that we're not committing to any sort of cap, because for India and for India specifically, if you look at India, buying oil from Russia, which is coming very cheap right now, is helping keep India's oil bill low. Which means that we're saving a lot of money, and India's argument is we need to look after our own people first. But also, if there are different ways to look at it. Everybody claims to have reduced the amount of oil that they're buying from Russia. But like a lot of European countries, like Germany, for example, the large beginning amount is so much that even after reducing, it's much more than India is buying from Russia. So it depends on how really you break this down and look at it. But India's stand, and to quote Hardeep Singh Puri, who's the minister of the government of India, he said, and I quote, "I would say that India does not fear the West's proposed price cap could constrain shipping and impede flow of Russian oil. I have no anxiety about that, and I'm sure the market will deal with it, because at the end of the day, nobody can do without oil, and so market forces."
Yeah.
Moving on to our next story. This is about Indonesia's new criminal code, which has banned basically sex outside of marriage. Do you want to take us through those rules?
Yes, so this is a revised criminal code, and the code says that if a complaint is first brought by the children, parent, or spouse of the accused couple, unmarried couples having sex can be jailed for up to a year, and those who live together could be jailed for up to 6 months. And this is only part of the entire code. There are many other things in the code that are worrisome as well.
But it'll take 3 years for the current
Yes.
code to be replaced by this one. But the thing to note, and if you're planning a holiday to Bali over the next 3 years or so, or Indonesia, that it also affects visitors.
Yes.
So apparently, obviously, a large portion of Indonesia's economy depends on tourism. A large number of tourists in Bali are Australian, and so this is going to, a lot of people are like frowning, saying, "Hey, what does this mean, and how do you enforce this?" See, in India, we had this argument, I remember, where at what point is the law allowed into your bedroom to decide who you can and cannot have intimate relations with if you are, and this was an argument that really came into the forefront during the 377 for the LGBTQI community. But if it is two consensual adults, then does the law really have any leeway to come into your bedroom and tell you what you can and cannot do? So this is effectively what a lot of tourists are going to be asking, like, how are you going to enforce this? So if I'm a tourist, I've flown from in some part of the world into Bali, and this code is now in play, are you going to make sure that nobody else comes into my room other than me? So
But Indonesia has sort of tried to allay concerns, and they've said that it's unlikely to affect tourists simply because it would require a complaint by the your parent or children or spouse of the couple.
Well, unlikely is not clear enough language,
Yeah.
first of all. And normally when laws like this get brought into place, it becomes a point of harassment for local authorities. Local cops can come and harass you and like shake you down for money and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting. I mean, it will take 3 years before this is enforced. But like Amitha was saying, This is just one aspect of it. There is an aspect where you cannot criticize the government, you can't insult the president or the vice president, up to 3 years in prison if they catch you insulting top office holders. Indonesia's civil rights organizations have said that this is a massive setback to freedom in the country. I'd agree. The other big thing to talk about is Chat GPT. Okay, everyone's talking about Chat GPT. Apparently, 1 million sign-ups in a week.
Yeah.
In 1 week.
And within a week of its launch. So it's been developed by Open AI, which is a research institute, and it's been founded in 2015 by a group of entrepreneurs, including Elon Musk.
So actually, the buzz started when Elon Musk took to Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say that. Elon Musk took to Twitter, and he said that, mark my words, effectively, he said something to the effect of, ChatGPT is going to be the next big thing, and everybody's like, "Ooh, what is this?" And so then they went looking for what this is, and they were just downloads after downloads after downloads. Now, Amitha attempted to download or to sign up. What happened? Too many questions.
Too many questions. Yes.
Too many intrusive questions. Too many questions.
Too many intrusive questions as well, and some things that I didn't want to answer. But it was also a little complicated. That's what I thought.
So basically, from what I understand, this is it's a chatbot, an AI-driven chatbot that attempts to answer questions that it's sort of an AI Google. So Google will just tell you whatever's on the internet. This will apply a layer of AI to it. So for example, I did see one video in which someone asked ChatGPT to rewrite a Shakespearean story for a 5-year-old. And it did that. It broke down the English and rewrote it. So that there's a sort of intelligence that is applied. It can do like creative tasks like writing a story, for example, like that. It can explain scientific concepts. It can answer questions that need factual answers. There is a language and a sort of conversational intelligence layer added to answering questions, and lots of people are having a lot of fun asking a lot of questions.
Yes.
Amitha felt that it was asking too much information and too much data, personal data, so she refused to give it that data. So we haven't gotten it yet. Someday. In another story, the chief executive of the Qatar World Cup has been criticized by human rights groups for saying, and I quote, "Death is part of natural life." He also, really berated the journalist from Reuters, who asked him about the death of one migrant worker, and he said, "I'm disappointed that this is the question that you're asking me." But there was one worker who died.
There was
one more worker, actually. One more worker.
One more worker who died, and FIFA, of course, said that they were saddened by this worker death. But apparently, and this is according to a report by The Athletic, that a Filipino national fell to his death while carrying out repairs at a resort used as a training base by the Saudi Arabian team. And now the chief to that said that death is part of life.
Yeah, so he, and this was in an interview with Reuters, this is Nasser Al-Khatar, who said that, is this something you want to talk about right now? I quote, "Death is part of natural life, whether at work or whether you die in your sleep. Of course, a worker died. Our condolences go to his family. However, it's strange that this is something you want to focus on as your first question," end quote. Remember, they've been, since the time Qatar started working on this World Cup, there have been reports of bad conditions that the migrant workers, many of them Indians, are working under. Remember, it gets really, really hot in Qatar for most of the year, and these workers were working outdoors. Now, there was a report, for example, in The Guardian about a year ago that said 6,500 migrant workers from India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka have died in Qatar since it won the right to host the World Cup 10 years ago. The Qatar authorities, on the other hand, have denied those reports and said the number is closer to 37.
Yes, and but the number is disputed because the Guardian or the Amnesty International, they don't mention whether these people died in the construction site or what.
One last story. Celine Dion, the singer, has revealed she's been diagnosed with a condition called stiff person syndrome. It's a rare neurological disorder which features an autoimmune disease, and it's led to difficulties in walking and in singing. It was a very sort of emotional. She broke down a little bit in that video that she uploaded as well.
Yes, and she also mentioned that she's not going to be singing in the UK and mainland Europe next year, and that will have to be postponed. And she's still learning about this condition. She said the spasms that she's been getting is because of this.
All right, so that brings us to the end of the world this week and all of the news that we've put together. We hope you enjoyed this breakdown. Leave us some feedback. Remember, like, share, subscribe to our YouTube page. We'll bring you news like this on a regular basis. Tell us what else you'd like to hear from us. Amitha and me signing off for this week.
Thank you.